and I think the future is exciting for those. Really, what we're talking about now heavily in Congress, trying to get workers trained for jobs in the real world, whether they work at REMA or some other place. We have jobs that are going wanting right now because we've spent too much time. Nothing wrong with a 4-year college or university education if that's what will do it for you, your child, your grandchild, for the future, and train them in the best way possible for jobs in the real world that they see as a sweet spot. But if it doesn't train them for that, then we've got a problem. So bottom line is, when we see jobs out there now that are speaking to technology, science, industry, machine, trades, all of that, a place like this is right on the heartbeat of what we've done with the Skills Act in Congress and other issues that we've attempted to address to try to encourage people to have the training that meets the needs of the real world. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be here. That go-kart interests me, for sure. As a grandfather, it's for my grandkids, not for me. That's not true. Let me also state something else. We have done 4 live town halls thus far this week, and starting out on Monday in Jackson, at Jackson College, community college in Jackson County, that also is here in Lenawee County and in Hillsdale County right next door. We then went up to Delta Township near Lansing in the northwestern part of my district. Yesterday we were in Dundee in Monroe County, and then ended up in Dexter yesterday afternoon. So we've tried to get around various spots. I'm glad to be here in Hudson today, which gives opportunity for Hillsdale residents to come across. We do these town halls. We believe it's important for a representative of the people, the district that he represents, to come home regularly, to stand and be counted, to respond to questions, as well as give information on what's being done. A lot of my colleagues don't do it. I'm ranked number 10 out of the entire Congress of 535 for the number of town hall meetings, live town hall meetings that we do, along with teletown hall meetings and other opportunities to meet constituents back home and bring that information back to Washington, as well as communicate what we're doing. Many of my colleagues have stopped doing it, and the reason they've stopped doing it is because they say, why should I put myself in a setting where the resist movement, the disrupt movement that's out there now, can have YouTube moments on the cameras, the iPhones that are always there, and to have that used against me in my next campaign. And that's what will happen. Yesterday we saw strong evidence of that, and are seeing evidences of taking statements out of context, and encourage me not to be as open and honest with my constituents because of fear of having those YouTube moments and having them spun against me. The fact that I would be challenged with an untruth, that I would, example of yesterday, be willing to hurt innocent people by doing away with Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, and health care is a scurrilous statement, not backed up with any truth at all, including my voting record and direct statements. But then to say in my response that took umbrage with that strongly, and now say that I countenance and make fun of domestic violence, anyone who knows me and has known my positions, my voting record, know my relationship with my wife of 43 years, and how I've carried myself out in this community, understands why I take umbrage with that. But I'm going to continue doing these town hall meetings with iPhones pointed at me, with recording being done by trackers for my opposition in the coming campaign. We're going to do this because you deserve to hear from your representative. But I hope when you hear those statements and see those pictures that will come from those cameras and those statements that are made, you'll understand there's another part of the story. Having said that, I know you have a lot of questions. I see cards up there. When our esteemed moderator, superintendent of schools here, finishes with all the cards, We'll go to direct question and answer as well. We find that we get through far more questions and concerns by going this route, having done these many, many, many times, than we would with just a straight open format. If you have your question read and you feel that it wasn't clear, or you feel that my response needs some further response with further clarification, we're glad to go to you if that was your question. So let's have it.
Our first question is from Dale from Morenci. Why the delay in Congress of the confirmation of Trump appointees?
Politics and Chuck Schumer. The third reason is that the Senate is unwilling to do away with filibuster. It is going to happen sometime. Harry Reid did away with it for appointments. Didn't do away with it for other things, but he did do away with it for appointments. Filibuster was put in place not in the beginning of our country, but it was put in place later on, and the filibuster requirement for the Senate was that they stand and they speak, and continue standing and speaking without stopping. Well, that's a challenge. That still can be a problem when it ultimately becomes just a simple blocking procedure. But in recent history, they changed that to simply saying, under a paper agreement, we will allow a filibuster on paper to take place and stop allowing a bill to come to the floor for debate by simply stating it must have 60 votes to overcome that filibuster, or, as the Senate calls it, bring cloture. Well, that's all well and good if it's meant to continue the process that the People's House, which doesn't have filibuster, is a wild and woolly environment, 435 districts, not representing states but representing districts, have their say in a fair and open format. But then the Senate is there to be a deliberative body to slow things down, to give further thought to it, to try to come up with a solution that is a compromise and meets the needs, or stop something that is ill-considered. That's one thing. But to stop the process, including the budget for the last 8 years, to stop the process of confirmations. 2.5 weeks ago, this figure, I don't know what the figure is today, but 2.5 weeks ago at this time, in the past administration, Barack Obama's administration, he had 90% of his appointees confirmed. 2.5 weeks ago, this administration of Donald Trump had 10% of his appointees confirmed. Any fair-minded person, regardless of party, would say that's an abuse of power of the filibuster. That has to change. As a House member, including our leadership, we've been asking the Senate to change it, to at least alter it. At a point in time after the filibuster goes on, for instance with the budget, when it comes to a month before the ending of the fiscal year, filibuster is done, and you get down to working on the budget. So we'll see what happens, but the answer, Dale, is the fact. The minority is using the filibuster, and the majority is unwilling to simply use the power of the majority and end it. I think I could say safely that if the Democrats take the majority again, they will end the filibuster. I wouldn't blame them. We'll see what happens.
The next question is from Hank from Adrian. I'm really concerned that President Trump is not complying with the Foreign Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. Would you consider joining on as a plaintiff in the Blumenthal and Conyers versus Trump lawsuit? If not, why not?
No. Let's let the lawyers, let's let the courts decide on that. If it were legitimate, there would be more than 2 Democrat representatives pushing that. Next question.
I think one more on President Trump. This is Roger from Glendale, Arizona. Also lives in Manitoba Beach. Have you had a one-on-one with President Trump, and is there anything you saw that we might not know about?
Yeah. And it amazed me. It amazed me, a one-on-one and then a small group with him in the Oval Office. I'd heard reports coming from Paul Ryan, who some of you may think Paul's not supportive of Trump, because on occasions when he's had to agree with some of the attitude or some of the tweets, the tone, stood up because of his principles and said, I don't accept this, I don't agree with this. But Paul has continued to be a strong supporter of the president's policies and a partner in working forward. But talking with Paul on numerous occasions in the locker room, especially each morning when we're there together in the gym, he said that it's been interesting to him to see behind the scenes Trump around the cabinet table with people in the room, whether it's cabinet officials or whether it's legislative leaders, etc., that he walks in the room on time, if not early, says relatively little, has a pen and notepad, expects everybody around the table and in the room to make comments relative to the issues that they're addressing. And if they don't, calls them out politely and says, I'd like to hear your comments, and takes notes. My meetings with him, I've seen him to be very much different than what the public persona is. Very collegial, congenial, and even humble and self-deprecating. Now that surprises probably everybody in the room here, as it surprised me. I think in his public persona, you will continue to see changes. I think his new chief of staff, who has gravitas, as a general should have, and has been known already to have had some fist-pounding sessions with the new president, and he's still in place, I think will be an asset to this president. So from my relatively few experiences in direct communication with this president thus far, that's what I can report to you. I can report to you as well that the people that I know who he's appointed to cabinet positions, and I know a number of them personally, including the vice president, who I know very well, he's made outstanding appointments. Outstanding appointments. People who are quality people, people who are considered people, people who are learned, and people who are of high reputation. And that ought to say something that's encouraging to all of us.
David from Adrian asks, has anyone or will you introduce a bill that provides for national reciprocity for concealed carry?
Yes, and yes, and yes. The bill has been introduced. I'm a co-sponsor, original co-sponsor of that bill. And we have all good reason to believe that that will pass readily in the House. Senate filibusters are still our problem, but it will pass in the House. I'm also part of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus. This thing is really sensitive. You've got to keep it in the right spot, then it pops. But the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus is a bipartisan caucus. Once a year, it's traditional for us to have the annual congressional shootout. We don't duel each other in parties. That used to happen in Congress, so we've not seen that yet. Sadly, we've seen outside forces attempt to kill and shoot our members. And we pray daily for Steve Scalise, my former staffer, Matt Micah, and I'm thankful to tell you both of them are improving. Steve has a long, long way to go. Matt Micah has a long way to go too, but greater prospects. But we have that shootout where we shoot sporting clay, trap, and skeet together. I'm proud to say the Republicans still hold the trophy. But that shows that in a bipartisan effort, I believe we've got that reciprocity bill through. I mean, doggone it. We do have the Second Amendment to the Constitution. We shouldn't even have to fight this issue. The Michigan Constitution has stronger language. So I ought to be able to carry my gun if I feel it necessary when I go visit my grandkids in Chicago. But legally, I can't do that. I can do it in Wisconsin. I can do it in Indiana. I can do it in Ohio. But if I want to go to Iowa, where I can't cross Illinois legally with my handgun. So no, I'm on the bill. I believe it will pass and move it forward.
Ron from Hudson, two-part question. How can you justify letting mentally ill people buy firearms? And two, why does the president lie so much? Please have a true town hall meeting for more than 1 hour.
I don't let mentally ill people buy weapons. We have lien checks, background checks, and frankly, there is no absolute certain way to tell of a person's mental condition. And as far as I know, the majority of handgun, long gun owners in this country use those weapons in appropriate fashion. And the concern is that if you put a specific binder against any mental health situation, you will see military who come back from military service who may not seek PTSD treatment, for example, because that will be on their record as a mental health issue, whether they have it or not, and will at the very least have great difficulty in achieving their Second Amendment liberties like the rest of us. And so it's not simply saying mentally incompetent, ill, etc. people can't have guns. It's how do we carry it out. So we've decided in Congress to do it a different route. And that's to put more money, effort, and legislation toward dealing with mental health issues. That's why in the 21st Century Cures Act, which we passed in Congress and it's been signed into law, also had a very large and strong additional piece of legislation added to that my good friend and colleague from Pennsylvania, Tim Murphy, who chairs the Oversight and Investigations Committee on Energy and Commerce, in which I sat, introduced that legislation as the only clinical psychologist in Congress. An in-depth piece of legislation that goes a long way beyond where we've ever gone in trying to deal with mental health issues and find the cures and the care that's necessary to keep people from being mentally ill and then getting a gun and using it wrongly. I think that's a better approach to it. That's a more proactive approach.
Harold from Clayton asks...
Oh, he had two more questions. Why does the president lie so much? Well, sir or ma'am, that's your determination. Bottom line is, I guess we have to deal with the information that he has that some of you don't have. And to simply call it a lie because you disagree with it isn't appropriate either. What was the third question on that?
Please have a town hall meeting for more than 1 hour.
Most of my town hall meetings go for a bit more than an hour, but we have a schedule. We have 7 counties to deal with, many communities, many site visits to make, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, speeches to make, a lot of stuff to do back when we're back in the district. And frankly, most of my town hall meetings, many of the questions that are asked are the same questions that have gone on since the first of the year. Remember, at least you're getting top 10 member of Congress for the number of live town halls we do. And then we do teletown halls, and many of you have had the opportunity to be on those teletown halls. We have other things to do than just town halls. But you're getting your fair share, at the very least, of town halls, and we'll continue doing it.
Harold from Clayton, 3 statements: repeal Obamacare, tax reform, simplify the tax code, make Washington accountable for what they were sent to D.C. to do.
Couldn't have said it better. I mean, all I can say is the House we passed, the repeal and replace bill, it's over in the Senate. 48 Democrats, 3 Republicans stopped that from moving forward. At least send a skinny bill back to us so we can go to conference committee and work out the differences and make the best solution that we could find possible legislatively. All of those members in the Senate represent states. All of us in the House represent districts. I, along with my colleagues, did our job. We kept our promise. When we get back in September, the comprehensive tax reform plan that is ready to come out of Ways and Means Committee and has been vetted all across the spectrum, including Democrats. Hear that again, including Democrats. Now, most of them don't agree with it. They think we ought to tax more, not less. They think we ought to do it with less equity and more separation. But we've worked this out with the White House, the Senate, the House leadership of the committees, as well as of the bodies. And the press conference was made just last week, or a week and a half ago, with the President, the Speaker of the House, Majority Leader, leaders of the Chairman of the committee, and we're moving forward on that. It will be a major, major enhancement to our economy to move to a tax policy that basically says the majority of citizens will be able to fill out their tax form on a 3x5 card and send it in. And that'll include many S-Corp businesses as well, which will also bring about opportunity for more jobs because of less onerous taxes on small businesses especially that provide the majority of jobs in this country. That'll be a good thing. So we're looking forward to moving that. Can't speak for the Senate, but it can speak for the House. We passed the repeal and replace of Dodd-Frank. Most of you heard, I'm sure, if you put your hands up, that there was a hearing with James Comey in front of a legislative committee. On that same day, Dodd-Frank repeal bill, the Choice Act, passed in the House. We didn't hear much about that. Kate's Law passed in the House. People were asking for that. That passed. That sits in the Senate as well, along with almost 200 other bills that we passed and still languish in the Senate due to the filibuster.
Rosalind from Addison asks, ever since the Unaffordable Care Act has passed, Americans have done their best to change the complexion of Washington by voting in Republicans. Yet all we've seen so far is the House's ridiculous 3-step program and the Senate's Obamacare light. What's the point of voting if the Democrats still call the shots and end up subsidizing the insurance companies?
Probably answered almost all of that question. So I'll just say, remember the filibuster in the Senate? I can't control that. Only the Senate can. Remember the fact that because of the filibuster, we can't send one big bill to repeal and replace Obamacare because it will be caught in the filibuster. That was the reason for reconciliation. That can only be used one time a budget year when a budget document has been passed by both houses. We've only been capable of doing that now for 3 years, since the Senate last term was given the majority to the Republicans. We passed budgets each of those years. That was the reason we had a reconciliation bill to use. The Senate's rules do not allow anything in a reconciliation bill to deal with anything except something clearly dealing with revenue or spending. So simple policy, like the allowance of purchasing health care across state lines, which is in our Better Way plan. The allowance for associated health plans, so small businesses can purchase, joining together with other small businesses, for instance, in an association can purchase health care plans for their employees at a reduced cost because of a larger number of people in that plan. We can't use that in a reconciliation bill. So there are a number of things that we would love to have had in that bill that we sent to the Senate, but due to the rules of the Senate, we can't. And if we violate the rules on one specific item in that reconciliation bill, it throws the whole bill out, and you can't start over. So that was the effort of trying to stay within the lines of the Senate rules and have the reconciliation bill as much as we could, which was the majority of repeal of Obamacare. It took out the individual mandate, took out the employer mandate, took out all of the taxes, which gave us almost $1 trillion more to put toward tax reform. You can see why we wanted that in there. And a number of other things, but it had to be narrowly defined. So that was the three-step process, which was a process made out of necessity. You can't do it any other way because of the Senate rules. Fortunately, we still have the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tom Price, who will continue fixing, repairing, repealing, and replacing portions of Obamacare that he can do by simple regulatory change. That'll be a challenge, working with a bureaucracy that is still in place from the last administration. But I know Tom, and I know him well. I know he's a bulldog. He's a doctor, and he cares about making sure that people have health care available to them in this country that meets their needs. So he'll continue to do that. We will continue offering individual bills like the Associated Health Plan bill that I am the prime co-sponsor of, the allowance for a purchase across state lines legislation that I'm a co-sponsor of, and other bills that will begin to peck away. And remember, it's a Senate that has rules that I believe, and I think many, many other people believe, it's time to end this filibuster that is just a blockade. If it is for the right purpose to slow things down, that's one thing. But if it's to stop any action from taking place, that's wrong for the people of the United States on either side of the issue.
A couple more healthcare related questions. Fred from Hudson. We argue about healthcare but ignore the cause of all of our illnesses. Highly processed foods lack nutrition, as also do foods from our mega farms, which back in the 1950s switched from animal and green manure to mineral fertilizers, only 3, and completely disregard the very important trace elements. We are essentially victims of secondary starvation.
I'm not sure I'm even capable to answer all of that. Due to some of the scientific issues that are there, we have certainly National Institutes of Health, we have the FDA, we have Agriculture Department and their resources that are looking into it. But in the legislative life, sitting on Energy and Commerce, we're taking action on some of those things relative to groundwater and drinking water. Just 2 weeks ago now in Energy and Commerce, we passed sweeping legislation promoting safe drinking water, coming off of Flint and other places, including some of the concerns we even have about lead in Adrian right now, and other issues dealing with clean, safe drinking water across the United States. We've been looking at issues, I know, in the Ag Committee on nutrition, and doing nutrition in an appropriate fashion, still giving choice to people, but making sure that there's legitimate, reasonable ways to get out calorie counts, content, on menu boards, menu labeling and all of that, but doing it in a way that doesn't swamp jobs in the fields and take away choice from American consumers as well. I, along with my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat, in the Great Lakes Caucus, and especially those of us here in Michigan, because we're surrounded by Great Lakes on 3 sides, we've continued to push for reasonable and proper enforcement Thus, recently, we had reinserted into our budget that will come out of the House full funding for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. I've written letters on that, and part of letters on that, and now part of legislation to make sure that's there. Last week, if you read the news reports, a Democrat colleague of mine from Youngstown, Ohio, Tim Ryan, was my prime co-sponsor of a bill I introduced that Candace Miller and I had introduced last term, a bill to use the Michigan MEAP program that has worked extremely well in our agriculture community here, a voluntary program that puts forward best practices, making sure that our streams, our creeks, our rivers, tributaries going into our Great Lakes are cared for, and that we have filter strips and other things that encourage environmental stewardship, as well as keeping the job of being a farmer going as well. So we introduced that, hoping that other states surrounding us, including Ohio, will step up and use a similar approach for agriculture, to make sure that agriculture, which I think in Michigan, thank you, has been a good steward of its resources and growing all the time. We wish some of the municipal water supplies and filtration plants would do just as well as agriculture, but we'll move forward in that area also. So, wellness programs in our bill in the House passed on repeal and replace of Obamacare, we had significant support for wellness that wasn't in Obamacare. In fact, there were prohibitions coming against wellness incentives for businesses under Equal Rights Act and under civil rights violations as being discriminatory against people if you gave bonuses for healthy practices in the job workplace. That doesn't make sense. And so we're going to push back against that and offer an alternative.
Dan from Manitow Beach asks, why is it not possible to amend the ACA to make it workable rather than repeal and replace?
Well, if that's all we can do, we're going to do our best to do that. We're going to have to. The ACA is melting down. People are being hurt by it. I don't know how many people I've talked to that says I have a health card, health insurance card, or a policy, but I can't use it. In reality, because when I go to use it, I've got $7,000 to $10,000 that my family has to pay out of their pocket or co-pays before I can use dime one of my insurance. I've got young farmers. I still remember at a town hall meeting in Jackson County, a young sheep farmer, successful sheep farm, gone through, I think, 3 generations now, who, with literally tears starting to well up in his eyes, said, I am being forced because of the income that I take from that farm. Those of your farmers in the room, you understand it's a different accounting system for your income. And you don't get it unless you have an income from the farm at the end of the year, and that deals with the cycles of weather and all sorts of things. He says, because of that, I'm forced to be on Medicaid. I don't want to be on Medicaid. I'm not what a Medicaid person used to be, one who had some tough luck, many times through no fault of their own, and for a time being needed the help of a social safety net. But I'm not that. I'm willing to care for myself and my family. But I'm being forced, with penalty, if I don't, to be on Obamacare Medicaid expansion. So those are the type of things that are there. So we've got to fix it, at the very least. With Barack Obama, he signed 10, I believe it was 10 bills that he supported to fix and replace and repeal certain parts of Obamacare already. Much more needs to be done at the very least. But it's a broken system. We want to go to a patient-centered approach that says, let the patient and the medical provider be the 2 most important parts of the decision-making process. And then let the insurance companies compete across state lines and otherwise for what they need, not what the government says they will take or what the insurance company says you'll take. but what the medical care provider, doctor, i.e., or the patient together say what we need. That young farmer may have said, all I need is a catastrophic coverage. I'm going to save for the child that he said was on the way. I'm going to pay cash for that. But what I need is something catastrophic, working on a farm. And at my young age, I'm healthy. I don't need all the rest of the stuff that I'm required to have. So that's the direction we need to go. But if we can't get it because of 48 senators, Democrat senators, and 3 Republican senators, then I guess we're going to continue to have to work to somehow make something out of nothing, as it were.
Philip from Adrian asks, why does the repeal and replace of Obamacare bill have to include the tax cuts for the rich?
Not tax cuts for the rich, it's tax cuts across the board. It's even tax cuts of penalty for the poor who don't pick it up. So, I mean, where did we get in this country? And I say this as a kid who grew up in a lower middle class home, a machinist tool and die maker, and a bus driver, school bus driver, my mother, who had been a school classroom teacher back before the Depression hit and had to move to Chicago to take a clerical job, got married. Ultimately, my father got cancer, lung cancer. Never a smoker, but worked in some pretty unsafe and unsavory places, U.S. Steel and others at that time. But did what they had to do. But never saw a reason to attack people who were wealthy, who had made it. Certainly there are people that didn't make it, yeah, but America allows that too. But where did we get to a point where we attack people who have succeeded, as opposed to saying, let's all be given the chance to succeed. Let's build that middle class, which we've destroyed in the last 8 years. The middle class is hurting. It's going away. I want more people to think beyond a minimum wage, and even the concept of living wage, as to what I can achieve without people, especially the government, standing in my way and making choices for me that I'm not happy with. So, in America, we understand, even with our Pledge of Allegiance, equal justice and liberty for all. We ought to espouse that. So again, the taxes, they were taxes across the board. I mean, should we leave the taxes of Obamacare on the rich, whatever figure that make it, 250,000 or more, or $1 million or more, or what do we do with that? Or should we say, let's make it more opportune for everybody to move up that ladder and be in the wealthy, and if not that, at least middle class? That's I believe is what America is. That's what my father and parents came from Sweden for that opportunity, and they added to America.
The next question is
that's my position. So,
is from Hank from Adrian. Do you support the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House to stabilize the ACA markets? If not, why not?
Well, I don't know all of what the Problem Solvers have brought out in a concrete fashion yet on what their alternatives would be for Obamacare. I've not been invited in that group. We'll certainly look at what they say. But I think right now, more than having multiple groups within Congress, Republican Study Committee, the Freedom Caucus, the Tuesday Group, the Problem Solvers Caucus, the Black Caucus, I'd like to see us start to work together with reality in mind that some of the things we're doing right now aren't working. Let's achieve change that works for the best of this country. So I'll be willing to look at the Problem Solvers ideas that they come out, but I'm more interested in representing the needs and wishes of this constituency.
Ed from Hudson asks, prior to your current term and President Trump's election, the Congress was known for accomplishing nothing legislatively. Since this session began, how many pieces of legislation have been passed by Congress and signed into law by President Trump?
The last figure that I saw on those bills that have been signed into law by the President was, in fact, a record number. I believe it was 35 bills. That was as of the first 100 days. or 107 days. That hadn't been done since Reagan. What we had passed in the House at that time was 156 bills during that same time period, and sent to the Senate, a number of which had been signed into law by the President. Was a record accomplishment since the Korean War. Sadly, the national media doesn't give you that information. And I'm glad to see local media at most of my town hall meetings. And that's where probably you're going to find much of your information. Or you go to a news site that we put up trying to get this information out, which is called didyouknow.gop. Check that out, didyouknow.gop. I think it'll encourage many of you with what we've accomplished, what could be accomplished if the Senate moves right around 200 bills that sit there that we've sent to them already. At least a good share of those move them to the President for signing. Well, like I said, on the area of what the President signed, 14 of those have been Congressional Review Act legislations. The 14th was mine, all dealing with overweening regulatory burdens that were placed on by the last administration in the final couple months of his office without going through the legislative process. We're successful in getting 14 of those Congressional Review Act resolutions through. The President signed and is already having impact positive on our country, on our business climate especially.
Tom from Manitoba Beach asks, President Trump is indeed a breath of fresh air in the typical Washington atmosphere. It's very welcome to many, but anathema to others. Brash, outspoken, given to overboard superlatives and outlandish statements. Have you met him one-to-one? What is he really like? And what is your take on the Russian interference, a witch hunt, or facts?
I've answered a big share of that question. Yeah, Trump is different. And I think ultimately that's why the guy that very few people thought could be elected was elected. I think that's a general indication of the atmosphere of the general public out there, who are just fed up with the same old, and who are willing to take a chance and risk putting a person who had never been in political office, who was a reality serial host, and was given to the mentality and the attitudes and the verbiage of a guy who's a promoter. But I think they also saw in him a spark that said, we truly believe that he does love America. And he wants America to succeed, not only here, but abroad as well. There were people that had heard statements from world leaders appealing to America to take at least strong verbiage on some of the bad things going on around us. Against Iran, for instance. Against Russia and its entry into Crimea. Syrian situation. And to draw lines that were very, very clear and plain. And have the intestinal fortitude to back it up. In talking with world leaders in Europe, the Baltics, Africa, and other places, I found since that election, while they all talk to me about the tweets, and we have some laughter around the tweets and raised eyebrows, yet in the end, the majority, overwhelming majority of these leaders say, we are glad, though, that America seems to have a president who's willing to speak strong and is willing to back up those words. And almost to a person, their final statements are something like this. We know that when America is strong, the rest of us are safer. And I think that's what's come across. And I think Donald Trump is a successful individual, has shown his ability to move and shape himself to what he needs to become to be successful where he's at. And I truly believe that he is moving that direction and maturing, not changing the fire, but may change the process of who he is and how he responds in certain cases. I mentioned that to him. I said, I appreciate your leadership. I would appreciate considering what you put out at times, because you can handle it. I've got to answer the questions for the next 2 weeks. So we'll see what happens. You got to give Congress also some latitude in gravitating toward understanding how to work with this administration as well. But as Americans, we ought to be committed to working in such a way that America succeeds. And in the recent hours with North Korea, people call Sun Myung-un a crazy man. All the information I have, without giving away classified information, says that he's not crazy in the aspect of not having significant intelligence. And we better not take him lightly. And I don't think this administration is.
I apologize. There's one word I'm not sure of, but I think you'll get the gist of the question. This is Ed from Hudson. For many years, American politics have been extremely divided. We've got red and blue states, Republican and Democrats, conservatives and liberals. We especially see it in the relationship between the media and the president. How do you personally believe that America, I believe it's amend this extreme political division?
One person at a time. Ed, I hope that my constituents, and 7th District of Michigan is a swing district. It's purple. It's a purple district, if you want to use those terms, red, blue. I think in recent elections, I would hope, because of my efforts of going everywhere, speaking in groups all over my district. And you only had to be to the Dexter one yesterday to see that it wasn't quite as polite as this one today, that's for sure. Thank you. And that didn't speak for all of Dexter either, or the surrounding areas. But I'm going to do my best, Ed, to act and live, vote, and work in such a way that while you know I have strong principles and a strong political philosophy, I also have a commitment to working as an American citizen for the good of all of America. And that's why I took such strong umbrage yesterday with lies being perpetrated with a question about me being willing to hurt seniors and disabled and children and take away Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, health care. I'm on Medicare. I want to be a person who unifies. And I can't force the president, I can't force other members of Congress, but I hope I can be an example. And I think each of you as citizens as well can do that in your families and your communities, and even in your response to political characterizations that go out there that are pure spin based upon nothing but political desire to disrupt, resist, and destroy. I'm not going to be part of that, and I think the general American public isn't part of that. That silent majority sometimes has to step up and say enough's enough.
Gene from Jasper asks, the question is in regards to farm programs. What is going on with CSP, CRP, CREP, and floodplains programs?
We here in Lenawee County, and we've been keeping up with it and have put some ag leaders in contact with head offices in Washington to express concerns. When you have the local director dismissed because of not carrying out the job that person was given, and ending up with farmers who simply acted upon what they were told from the local office was the expectations of them, even though in some cases, as Washington told me, they should have known these aren't new programs, and filter strips have to be a certain size, and you can't put structures up on CRP land or let big trees grow on it. That has been part and parcel of it. But there are other issues that our agricultural industry was led to believe and carried out, and now they're caught. In my conversations with the head in Washington, I was assured that there would be no clawback of dollars that were given under that time period, but it wouldn't be allowed to continue on. And so we're keeping up with it, and certainly open in my office, and have one individual in my Jackson district office who that is one of their key responsibilities, to keep up on that issue and respond to constituents, as well as get them in contact with the appropriate entities in Washington if necessary. We're glad to keep doing that. But another example of government programs, government aid, sometimes being too large, ultra intrusive, and in the end, sometimes causing more problems than they're worth. But they are what they are.
Dwayne from Hudson asks, why can Chinese companies ship goods across the United States for free and undersell U.S.-made goods?
Well, in certain cases that happens. It's because of our regulations or lack of regulations. And again, that's part of our tax reform challenge. We want to encourage more exporting of our goods and services without the hurdles of unnecessary regulation. Quote me accurately on that. There is necessary regulation and necessary taxation, but there are also significant unnecessary regulatory rules as well as tax policy that is putting extra hurdles in front of our businesses being able to compete on a fair and level playing field with their competitors, which now we have the world over, not only China. And that will be our effort. So if, for instance, China, Japan, making it not just picking on China, puts extra taxes and regulatory rules on anything we ship over there, then at the very least, that ought to be what they receive here. And I think that's part of the tax policy that we've been pushing in the House. At the very least, well, I would say probably better than anything else, we would hope that we wouldn't up the regulatory and tax policy, but rather that would discourage them and stop them from doing it to us. We can compete. Our industries are more efficient, better trained, better quality. We have better research and development than any of those competitors of ours. One thing I saw when I went to China that I was glad to see is that they're not innovators yet, to any great degree. They're imitators. We're innovators. And if we don't put up roadblocks in our own way, I think we'll do just fine.
Juanita from Manitow Beach asks, what is being done to create a variety of jobs in smaller communities for workers of all generations? Men and women in their 50s and 60s and younger need work in offices and small businesses closer to where they live. There are numerous empty buildings in Hudson, Manitow Beach, Addison, Clinton, Brooklyn, etc.
As far as I know, the only way we can do that in the United States is grow the economy. How do we grow the economy? We make it more possible for the grassroots economic developers, that being business people, to be successful. And when you put laws in place like Obamacare that make a full-time workday, 30 hours, in order to have enough people to pay into the system or have businesses pay enough into the Affordable Care Act policy. You make it more difficult to have jobs. Because now you have the lady in Jackson who worked 36 hours a week at a companion care business, and then on the weekends worked at a restaurant. And that 36 hours, though it was part-time, still gave her some benefits from the companion care job and additional dollars for herself and her child to make ends meet, and she was happy. Until the Affordable Care Act went through and said that the 30-hour work week was the full-time work week. And so now she had been put down to 25 hours of work at her companion care business. And the rest of the dollars that she received from her restaurant, a waitership, didn't make it. And she had lost her benefits. So what we do mandating from top hurts the growth of the economy down below. Let's give all opportunity for the small businesses that you're talking about in this question to succeed and to grow, and the competition to develop, that there's more of those businesses that come into our downtowns or in the surrounding communities. I don't know of any other way of doing that other than have direct command by the government and have government entities, and that doesn't work any other place in the world. Our free market, free enterprise, capitalist system has worked best for us and for the world by giving freedom of opportunity to succeed or fail, but then not standing in the way of someone getting up and going on again. I saw that in my own father's life, and I'm thankful for the opportunity America gave him and his willingness to do whatever it took to end up moving back up again to succeed for his family. That's, I think, the only answer. Big government has proven that it can't do it.
Philip from Adrian. What happened to country of origin laws, also known as COOL, for foods and pharmaceuticals? Not just show distribution location, but manufacturing or where grown.
Well, we did modify that. We modified it for the purposes of some of our agricultural industry. We're going to be significantly hurt in their ability to export our goods, our products, our agricultural products, beef, milk, and other things, by having an onerous country of origin labeling that went in too great of detail. Would have violated the agreements under the World Trade Organization, and would put sanctions on us, and it would hurt the people that we were allegedly trying to help. It's complex when you don't have competitors in a global economy. You can do pretty much whatever you want. When you have actual competitors, even in the near north, Canada, in those same products, goods, and services, you have to take into consideration it all. So I think we came to a positive conclusion. It didn't satisfy all, but gave the opportunity for continued export and competition that benefits all of us.
Although this person didn't follow the rules and put their name on here, I think it's the last question is a very important question, if you don't mind. It's North Korea, question mark, healthcare, question mark, coffee and donuts, question mark.
Did we say anything about donuts? We got coffee. There's only, I think, only been one town hall where, for some reason, we didn't get the coffee there. And boy, did we take it on the social media network after that. That's one thing we've made sure, that there's coffee here. But donuts? No. I mean, that just leads to jokes about politicians and donuts. So, on Korea, I mean, we are at a point that we've let simmer for too long. And I'm not saying it was the last administration that let it simmer, though I am saying that. But I think it's gone on for too long with Sun Myung-un's father, with Un's father, Moon, beforehand. And it's time to stop it. I, like the majority of my constituents, don't want a military strike. But I hope I, like the majority of my constituents, want us to be capable of responding to a significant and sincere military threat to us or to our allies. South Korea, probably most importantly. I just met with a group of South Koreans this past Saturday morning. And that's their concern. They understand that they sit there right on the line. And they understand that UN wants to reunify through an aggressive act South Korea with North Korea. I've stood on the DMZ and looked across to the literally denuded hillsides where the poor people of North Korea are cutting down all their trees to heat their houses and cook their food, what little food they have. I've seen the shells of buildings. They are literally shells. There's nothing inside of it, but they're made to look, for PR purposes, like they're a significant resort hotel on a hillside. I've seen the satellite pictures of the preponderance of lights coming from South Korea from a satellite picture at nighttime. And basically one light in the Capitol Square lighting UN's father's statue. This is a threat coming from North Korea that has the largest army in the world. That's fact. Fortunately, they don't have the largest military in the world. And they don't have the best trained or weaponized military in the world. But that's their entire effort. That's why their citizens are starving. So that UN can continue to build it up, harden his resources with tunnels way underneath mountains. That frankly, there's a debate whether we could even penetrate those if we had to. So this is a serious issue. And I'm glad that strong statements are being made, but more importantly, I'm glad for briefings that I've had from esteemed military leaders and intelligence gatherers who know a lot of what's on the ground there. And I believe I can safely tell you right now, we are prepared. But even as we're prepared, the impact of letting this guy, who's crazy like a fox, this guy push a button would be catastrophic to human beings, even though we are capable. We are capable of responding to that. So, again, another reason for America to unify together, to make sure that we put forward that unified front that says we will stand strongly against aggression wherever we find it in the world, and support our allied countries that count on America to be strong. And we should count on them to stand with us with all the strength that they have as well.
No further submitted questions.
Well, we have a few more minutes. Yes, ma'am.
We have the problem with the...
I never give away the mic.
We have a problem with the division between the liberals and the conservatives about the illegal aliens. Would not a solution be to grant these people amnesty as long as they sign a document that says they will never become U.S. citizens and they will never be allowed to vote? Because I think the reason why the other side wants them to have immunity is to increase the votes for their party.
Good question, and I think that solution is growing in support in Congress, and even some of the statements that the president has made in recent months has indicated an openness to look that direction. I think he's hearing the same things that I hear on a regular basis from the agriculture community, from construction community, from some of the high-tech community, saying we want to hire American citizens, and you can tell us, well, just pay them more. But we have challenges in just paying them more. But we need to have legal, verified immigrant labor to assist us until such time as we have our own citizens to take those jobs. So I think that's growing in support. I know the Speaker of the House leans that direction. And like I said, hearing some of the reports and even statements that are moderating a bit from our president, I think that's growing. But I think we still have to make it very clear to the American people we're a nation of laws. And we expect people who come here to understand that they're going to live under our laws. And they're going to assimilate into our country. Whether you call that a melting pot or a salad bowl, I don't really care. But I know that my salad tastes like the salad I want it to taste like, because it's melded together in such a way that it's what it's supposed to be. Or I know the melting pot of soup with my venison bones in it is going to taste like venison as opposed to beef. And when I have my beef stew, it better taste like beef and not venison. And America needs to be that way. And I think America will accept that. And I think the reason they wanted border protection and why we can have to go in the House, we passed the bill, 4 bills, and one of those had the money in for what the president was asking for his, quote, wall. Because America wants to feel secure. But America's also, I believe, willing almost across the board to have immigrants come in because, frankly, you know that increases our gene pool, our creativity, our resources. But let's do it right. Let's do it legally. Other questions? I don't give it away because 2 days ago we had a young man who came up and commandeered the mic and wouldn't give it back until the police had to take him out. So.
This is more on the health Obamacare. I hear that there is a group in D.C. that is interested in taking as much of the money spent on health care and put it in a big pile and redistribute it to the states according to the population. In my mind, that's a legitimate and possible solution where each state can come up with its own plans for health care, and out of those 50 states, we may come up with some real good ideas where Washington only comes up with one idea.
Good point. And if that proposal could come back from the Senate, I would probably support it, as long as we take the taxes off of Obamacare and we give those resources back to the states. And make the states come up with the idea on how they fund it as well. I say that because you don't often hear me quoting the governor of California, Jerry Brown. But just in recent months, the Assembly of California has been attempting to put through a single-payer health care system for California. One house passed it, and Jerry Brown said, I believe it was the Senate that was coming to it. The Senate passes, I'll veto it. And the reason he said that was because it would cost them, according to him, to pay for single-payer system in California, it would cost $400 billion. These are his figures. Their total state budget is $124 billion, $126 billion, right there. He said that would mean we would have to raise taxes in California, which are already onerous. He didn't say that, but he said we'd have to raise taxes over $200 billion to pay for that $400 billion cost and have nothing left for the rest of our budget. So if Jerry Brown is saying that single payer would be too costly, what do you think it would cost for the entire nation to be under single payer? So that's why I say, if we're going to give a per capita direct grant back to the states to take on whatever they determine best, and I think our legislature and our governor probably could come up with a pretty good idea, let them also figure the best way to pay for it as well. and then get the federal government out of all the way. That'd be ideal. But I don't, in all honesty, I don't think the votes are there in both houses to do that. So that's why our bill that did get the majority in one house, I think is still the best format for it. Can I take one more question? I know I have a, I know I have an engagement right after.
We're over time right now.
Let me take one more. I know you've asked the question another town hall meeting. Well, no, let me get this gentleman.
Yeah, with the single payer, the Commonwealth Fund, which is a U.S. think tank, they released a report that said our healthcare system is most expensive in the world. Excuse me. For example, healthcare expenditure in the U.S. is $8,500 per capita. In Canada, it's $3,800 per capita. We have the most expensive in the world, but we underperform relative to other countries on most dimensions of performance. 11 nations studied in the report: Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, and Switzerland, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The U.S. ranks last in being able to provide good health care.
Well, as you know, the old adage about figures and liars, and I'm not calling you that, but those figures don't take in consideration the costs of the tax policy, for instance, in Canada or Great Britain, that people are paying without choice, and goes into paying for that health care system, including what they pay beyond that. It doesn't figure that in. I'm not debating the fact that our system is too costly, but that's not because of what we have capabilities here for. That's why we need to do a health care reform. That's why we need to get the government mandates out of the way. That's why we need to encourage competition. We did just fine in leading the world in health care back when I was a kid, I know that. And the ability of my dad to pay cash for the health care. But I would also add this in conclusion. Why, when people from Canada have a significant heart problem or cancer problem, or people in Great Britain come to the United States, including governmental leaders, presidents and kings from other countries, come to the United States for care, if it's so good around the world? We need to fix this process. It's broken here now, for sure. We can do it better through a patient-centered approach that encourages competition, choice, and expands the means by which we pay for it, and make the doctors, the hospitals, and the insurance companies have to compete for our business. I think we'll do just fine. Those numbers are numbers that don't tell the whole story to any stretch of the imagination, or else you wouldn't have Canadian citizens coming here to get care if they don't have a choice.
There are very few Canadians coming here for care. You can look at the data. Very few. Most of the
that is not true.
That are treated in our healthcare system are emergencies when they...
Because they can't get it.
No.
They can't get it.
They are here. They're already here as visitors, as tourists, and it's an emergency.
And they've come here for health care.
No, they're treated here.
And they're treated well.
They may be treated well, but they didn't come here
We won't carry on this debate, but all that to say, if you're healthy in Canada, you like your health care. If you're not healthy and you have to wait in line for that surgery or that procedure, you don't like it. And that's why there is a underground train, as it were, railroad to the United States for health care. I want to say thank you to you for being here today. We've gone over a little bit, so tell people we go beyond our hour. But I do have additional appointments that we have to carry on. And I think we covered a lot in an hour anyway. So thank you for your attention. And we look forward to seeing you in another community near you in the future. And thank you to our moderator and again for the host of this site visit.